issues, but I think we're good to go. So let's go ahead and get today's class rolling. One reminder of stuff that you probably are already somewhat aware of. Web Caesar is due today. If you haven't quite got it finished yet, don't freak out. That's all right. We're here to help you out. So, after class today, flag me down, flag down your TA. Let us know what help you need to get that finished up. If you need to submit it on Monday, that's okay, as long as you get it submitted. That's what we care about. So certainly we want you to try and keep caught up. But this is, honestly, I've taught this class, I don't even remember how many times, a few times. And this is really the part of the class where I start to see people start to slip behind a little bit. So if that's happening to you, don't panic. It happens to a lot of people. I'm used to it. I've seen it before. We're not going to give up on you. We want to help you. So let us know what we can do to help you get caught up on some of this stuff. Are there any questions before? Oh yeah, also I was asked to make you aware that they're doing a trivia night this weekend. So if you want to do some trivia, you can buy tickets on the website. I think there's still tables available. So if you can get together some friends and want to buy a table, you should do that. I unfortunately will not be coming. I would love to come beat you all out of trivia, but well, that's subjective, but yes. But yeah. All right, if there aren't any questions, then yeah, question in the back. What's the website? Launchcode.org should have the, yeah.
Actually a question about trivia night. Is it trivia questions about programming related stuff, or is it just general?
So the question was, are the trivia questions about programming? I have no idea. They didn't ask me to write the questions. I don't know. I imagine that some of them might be, but probably not all of them. There might be like one round of programming stuff, and then the rest will be the regular trivia questions. I don't know about you guys, but I really struggle because I'm not a St. Louis person, so you ask me questions about like old Cardinals teams and stuff, I have no idea. So that's what gets me on trivia nights around here. But anyway, we have a very important topic today based off of what I saw on Slack. This was a topic that I think deserves a little bit of discussion to help clear up some confusing points. So I'm hoping to get those ironed out today. We're going to go through some examples with our Flick List application like we usually do. We'll get some practice on today's studio as well. Today we're talking about templates. So let's have a chat about templates for a little bit before we start doing some Flick Lists. What is a template? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you. Go for it.
It's kind of like a framework, so stuff that you put in every program or every website that you're setting up. You don't want to have to keep repeating it, so you put like that base into a template.
So that's one advantage of a template, is it allows us to write code that is reusable. That is correct, yeah. And so when I think about writing a template, what do I expect to see in a template file? What do I expect most of that to look like? HTML, mostly HTML. There might be some other stuff too, and we're going to talk about what that other stuff is and do some of that other stuff in just a little bit. But there's going to be a lot of HTML. So the templates are going to be mostly geared towards HTML. And so the question is why? Why do I bother? We had a website that we've been working on the last couple weeks now. We've been writing HTML the last couple weeks now, and we've got a website that, doesn't do a whole lot, but it does work. It does some things. And today, we're not actually going to add anything new at all. We're just going to rewrite our website to use templates instead of the way that we have been doing things. And the question is why? Why would we bother? What's wrong with the approach that we've been using, or how could it be improved? Why are templates considered to be an improvement over what we've been doing? Yeah. It standardizes it? So what do you mean? I'm sorry?
Like, you would avoid anomalies like otherwise
When rewriting HTML. So it keeps the HTML separate, right, from the Python side of things. That's a really big part of it, I think. Consider what those two pieces of our program are used for. HTML is really kind of like the structure, right, of our website, whereas the Python side of things is more of the behavior. How do I want this website to act? How do I want it to behave? And so how we've been doing things up until this point is we've just kind of been throwing all of that in one place. And the argument for using templates is, well, let's keep those two things separate. It's going to allow us to stay organized and also eliminate some challenges. I mean, consider for a moment, right now we had a website with how many pages on it? Maybe 2 or 3? That's pretty small. Consider a website that you might use on a regular basis and how many pages that has. And then think about how big our main.py file would get if I put all that stuff in one place, right? It would be very difficult to navigate that file. It would be very difficult to see, where the HTML and the Python code was that I needed to find for a particular thing. We're already going to kind of have those kinds of problems as our website gets bigger and bigger, even with the templates. It'd be worse if we didn't have them. And so we're really trying to make the point of separation of concerns, separating out what different parts of the program are used for, keep those completely separate, let them worry about their task. And then periodically they'll need to interact with each other, right? Periodically they'll need to have a conversation, pass some information back and forth perhaps, to do their jobs properly. So let's talk about that for a moment. How do we use placeholders in our template? If I have a template and I want to stick in a placeholder, so some piece of data goes here. I don't know what that data is, but I want some piece of data to go here. What does that look like? Curly braces, but this time we're going to double it up. We're going to double the curly braces. And so then this leads me to my next question. This might be the most important question that I ask you today. What does it mean to render a template? What does it mean? What is that actually doing? It displays it? So kind of. We're getting warmer. It is bridging the gap between the template and the Python. That is correct. It does bridge the gap between those two things. And so in the process, what happens, I can't leave those placeholders in anymore. I have to fill them with actual data, with actual stuff. So when I'm rendering, I'm saying, take this information that I have on the Python side and put that in where the placeholders are in the template side. Right? It's bridging the gap between those two parts of my program. That's what rendering means. So when I have a template, the name template even suggests that there's going to be holes, there's going to be gaps. That's what those placeholders are in the curly braces. When I render it, I'm filling in those gaps. Much like I would if I was filling out a form or if I was filling out like a Mad Lib or something, right? That tells me that a certain piece of information goes in this spot. That's what it means to render a template. It's probably the most important thing we're going to talk about today. We're also going to talk about template extensions today. So what is a template extension? What does that let us do? Yeah, go ahead. So it does, that's the last piece in particular is what I'm interested in. It allows us to reuse part of our code. So if I have some HTML code that I expect to be, common across many different pages, I can use extensions for this purpose. So we'll define, it actually reminds me of a concept that we talked about towards the end of Unit 1. What does this kind of sound like? Sounds like inheritance. Sounds a lot like inheritance. It's a little bit different because we're not dealing with classes or objects here. We're dealing with templates, which are not the same thing, right, as classes or objects. But the idea is still similar. I have a base template, and then I'm going to use that base template in other sub-templates to copy that code. Yeah?
It's just like a or perhaps just like another way to like a template of a template?
Yeah, sure. You can think of it as a template within a template. Yeah, I like that a lot, actually. And that's you know, it's sort of become a reoccurring theme. As programmers, we like to find ways to reduce having to type the same thing over and over and over again. It gets boring, it gets tedious, and it gets problematic when I have to change my program and then I have to go find the 10 different places where I use that piece of information, right? So if we can use tools that will help us reuse the same code over and over again, it's just going to make our lives easier in terms of how much code I have to write and how easy it's going to be to modify that code if I need to in the future. Good. We could sit up here and talk about templates all day long, but I think the best way to get to know them is to do some practice. But before I do, are there any questions? Yeah.
That's more question about good practice. So, the case in which we put stuff in the base that is only relevant to some of the extent, say, in this case, relevant because I think it was a CSS relevant to a certain class that only some extensions have been called. But so for the ones that don't call, it's not doing anything either good or bad.
Yeah.
Is it okay to put it in the base even though it's not really doing anything for this other?
That's a great question. So the question was, you know, is it okay to put stuff in my base template that is only going to be used for some of the templates that use the base template, right? And not all of them. And the answer is a little tricky. I think in some cases I would consider that to be okay. You mentioned CSS in particular. I think that's a pretty common form that appears, actually. In fact, we might even see that today, as a matter of fact. The consideration to take into account here is that, you know, if I'm linking some CSS in my pages, it takes a little bit of time for that to be processed. So it sort of matters, you know, like, am I loading 10 CSS style sheets that I never plan to use, or am I just loading a little snippet that I, you know, am not planning to use? It makes a big difference. I'd be much more willing to let a small chunk go than a big chunk of stuff. If I have a really big chunk that's different between the two, then that's an indication that maybe I should make 2 separate base templates and use the appropriate one depending on what the page needs. So yeah, there's not really a hard line though. It's just kind of a feel it out sort of situation. Great question. Any other questions before we start putting stuff to work? Yeah, what's up? Okay, so the question was about the base templates and the other templates and content blocks and everything, how they relate to each other. So inside of my base template, right, I'm probably going to define 1 or more blocks. And then some of my other templates are going to extend the base template, and they have the option. In fact, I'd say probably maybe a little bit stronger than the option. They really should fill that block in. You can actually think of a block as almost like a placeholder in it for a template, or what was suggested earlier was like a template within a template. That's really kind of what a block is allowing us to insert a template into another template. And we're going to see an example of that later on today. A block is really just another form of a placeholder, like we would see in a regular old template. What other questions can I discuss with you before we start doing some code? Alrighty, so we have a bit of work to do today. We're going to start with our flick list application as it was at the end of the last studio, and we're actually not going to add anything new to it today, at least not in the walkthrough. All we're going to really do in the walkthrough today is add in some templates. We're going to add in some templates, which is not a small task, so it's going to take a bit of work. So here's my git bash. Let me see if I had this on a dark theme before and then it switched back for whatever reason. How did I do this before? Theme. Dracula, whoa. Okay. I don't know why it switched it back. It's a little easier to read, I think, when it's darker like that. I sure am. So I've already switched over to the walkthrough 4 branch, right? I don't know if you guys are getting sick of me talking about this or not. There's going to come a day when I'm not going to make a big deal out of it anymore. So if you haven't done so already, make sure you've committed your stuff from Studio 3 and switched over to the walkthrough 4 branch. And so we want to use templates today, and that actually changes our project structure pretty significantly. We've been doing all of our work in one file called main.py, and that's not going to be true anymore. Starting today, we're going to do work in lots of files, not just main.py, but we're going to need to make some template files as well. And those template files live in a particular spot. So we need to make that spot first of all. Whoa. Thanks, Gary. We're getting the true programming experience today. Almost as dark as my basement that I program in. I don't actually code in my basement. So we need to make a spot for our templates to live. In fact, the Flask is actually expecting our templates to appear in a particular place, namely a folder called templates, right? That's what it's expecting. So how do I make that folder? Make directory, mkdir. I can't see my keys anymore. Make directory templates. And we can do a little ls here and see that, okay, now I have a templates directory. That's good, right? Something else that I think is going to be useful for us, so in Visual Studio Code, right, we're also going to want to be able to access not just main.py, but also the template files that we're working on. And so one thing that we can do in Visual Studio Code is, instead of just opening up a single file, we can actually open up an entire directory. This is a very neat trick to know how to do. So I already have Visual Studio Code open. I'm actually going to close it. Oh, that's bright. And I'm going to say, maybe, code dot. What does the dot mean? I'm sorry? Current directory. Dot is the current directory. So I'm telling Visual Studio Code not to open a particular file, but to open the current directory, which means it will include all of the files that are currently present. Even the license and the README, yes, which technically we don't really need those. I'm not really concerned with either of those files, but that's okay. They're coming along for the ride. All right. And so I can actually show you what that did. If I open up the Explorer, which is this button up here in the top left corner, you can see that I actually have access to everything that's here, right? Including this templates directory. It's currently empty. There's nothing in it, but it's all here. I have access to that, as well as my main.py and the license and the README and everything as well. And so this is going to make it easier for me to switch from file to file. That's why I did it that way, because it's going to make it easier for me to switch from one file to the next. So we have some work to do. We need to take the existing code and start using some templates. And so in order to consider how to do this, right, when this is done, when we are finished with today's walkthrough, I don't want to see any HTML in here. None. I don't want to see any HTML in here at all. So I've got a lot right now. I've got a significant chunk of HTML right now. And we're just going to take it one page at a time. I'm actually not going to do all of the pages. I think I'm saving one for you to do in today's studio, but we're going to do at least a couple of them, right? Which page should we start with? Let's start with the the front page, the very first one, which is this one here, right? This one here. You can see the way that we used to do it before is we had a whole bunch of HTML stuff, right? All that, and then we concatenated it all together and returned it. And that's not what I want to do anymore. What I want to do now is I want to make a template. I want to make a template that contains all of that HTML. So let's go ahead and do that. We can do this on the command line if you want to, or we can also do it through Visual Studio Code, and I personally don't really care which way you want to do it. If you want to do it through Visual Studio Code, I can click on my templates folder, and then this little button right here, the sheet of paper with the green plus on it, is for a new file. So I can make a new file. I'm going to call it index.html. Okay, everybody with me so far? And so I want to take all of the HTML for that front page, right, and put it in here. So that front page had the title on it, and it had, what else did it have? It had the form to add a movie, and it had a form to cross off the movie, right? I want all of that stuff to go here. So I'm going to go back to my main.py and start looking for the HTML that relates to that front page. So I'm going to go all the way up to the top, right? This is the first piece, the header, right? This is the very first piece. So I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to move it over.
So you don't grab the line with the triple quotes.
No, you don't need the triple quotes. No, this is actually an HTML file. It's not a Python file, so I don't need to worry about Python syntax stuff like the quotes. Good question. Good question. All right. So I grabbed the first part of the HTML and moved it into my template. And then the next piece of HTML that I expect to see, or would be, I mean, we can look at this to kind of help us out down here. Edit header plus add form plus cross off form. So we need to start tracking down these pieces, right? Edit header, where does that come from? That's the next thing. That's going to be this one right here, right? So I'm going to grab this little snippet of HTML. I'm going to copy it, and I'm going to move it over. And then I'm going to come back over here, and the next thing that it says is the add form. That's the next piece that we had on this page, right? So I have a variable up top called add form, which is this right here, correct? So I'm going to grab this. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it over here. Okay. And so we still got some more HTML we need to find. The next piece of HTML that's listed here is going to be the cross-off form, this cross-off form, right? So I'm going to go find the HTML for the cross-off form that we built, which is right here. I'm going to grab it, and I'm going to copy it over. Now with this one, we actually have a little bit of a problem. What's the problem? What is this? This is what we used with the .format method last time, right? We can't do that here. .format is not, that doesn't exist here. That's no longer part of what we can do because this is not Python. This is not a Python file. I cannot execute Python code. Kind of. There's, we'll talk a little bit about how we can get around that. So this is something that we're going to have to address. I still need to create these option tags, but I can't use Python to do it anymore. I have to do something a little bit different. That's something that we're going to need to consider. But before we get to that, let's do the last little piece, we've got a couple more pieces left. After the cross-off form, I have this error element. So that's if there's an error message to display. So that would be this right here, this little chunk of HTML. So I'm going to copy that and scoot it on over. And we're almost done. We're almost there. The last piece that I need is going to be the footer, the page footer. So I'm going to go find that page footer, which is right here, and grab that HTML and put it in. So we still have some work to do, but I'm going to pause here for a moment and just make sure that you're following along. If you're trying to follow along with me, that you've got this code in this file. We actually still have some work to do. There's still some things that we need to consider here, right? But I have already made some progress by copying all of this HTML out of the Python file into the template, into my template. All right. So there's two issues we need to talk about next. One is this right here. We already sort of noticed that that's a little problematic, so we need to fix that. The other one actually has to do with the error message down here. This is a Python variable, right? Do I have access to that? No, I don't. I don't have access to that variable anymore because I'm not in a Python file anymore. I'm not in a Python file anymore. So let's take a moment to talk about those two issues a little bit. Here, what I would like to do is take somebody's watch list, which is in fact a list of movies, right? And make option tags out of those movies, correct? So we can actually see how we did that in Python. This is what we did, is this what we did just last Monday? I can't remember, feels like forever ago. But we did this in class. We wrote a loop to go through the watch list and create these option tags. Can I do that in my template? Yeah, I can. I sure can. I can make a loop in my template to do the same thing. In fact, we have to, if we want to make this work the same way. So how do I put a loop in here? This bracket 0 has to go away. That doesn't work anymore because we don't have format. But how do I put a loop in here? Curly bracket, %, space, and then I can start making a loop for movie in watch list. Everybody with me so far? No? Yes? Anybody have any questions about what I've done so far? Where does watch list come from? Where do I get that? I render it. Rendering is how I take information from Python and pass it to my template. So right now, watch list is an example of a placeholder. I don't know what the watch list is going to be. If you want to display this page, when you render it, you need to pass me a list of movies. You need to pass me a watch list so that I can plug it in at this spot and use it in my template, right? So it's really just a placeholder. So now that I've got that placeholder, I can start to construct these option tags, and we can use the Python code that we've already written to help us with this. So, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. If I go back to the Python code, right here, we can take this little snippet of HTML here and modify it a little bit to help us suit our needs. I don't want bracket 0. That's what we did when we used format. How would I substitute a movie into this line using the template syntax now? Double curly braces, and then what's going to go inside of those curly braces? The variable name that I want. So what variable name is that? Not quite. It's movie. Movie is the value that I'm using from my list, right? That's what I'm using in my loop. Movie. And now we've actually got one more thing we need to do before we're done with this loop, which is what? I have to end it. That might seem a little weird, right? We've never had to end our loops before. How do we end our loops before? What do we use? How do we end loops in Python? You're technically correct, but not what I was looking for. I just stop indenting. I just don't indent stuff anymore. And then the loop is over. Does indentation matter in this file? HTML does not care about indentation at all. Doesn't care one bit. In fact, don't do this. Don't do what I'm about to say. But if you wanted to, I could take this whole file, put it on a single line. HTML don't care. It does not care. You shouldn't do that because that would look horrible, but it would work. Instead, so because we can't use indentation to specify the end of a loop, we have to be explicit. And I always forget, is it one word or do I separate them? It's one word? Okay. I always forget. So we've taken care of one of our issues with this template. Yeah, question. We're not yet, but we will. We'll have to. Yes, so that's a great question. The question is, does it know that you're passing something in because it's inside the curly braces? And it's actually sort of, you can think of it almost like a contract, right? When I'm writing the template like this, and I put variable names inside of the curly braces, I'm telling the template like, hey, I don't know what this is right now, but I promise that when I render this template, I will tell you what it is, right? That's kind of the contract that you're making. And so it's up to us then to make sure that we fulfill that contract and pass in a list of movies so that there's something that can go here. Otherwise, our template's going to get unhappy with us. Oh, okay. So, well, that's a good question. We've seen, I've got double curly braces, and then I've got curly braces with a % sign. What's the difference? One is for variables. So if I'm just sticking a variable in, double curly braces is fine. If I'm trying to do something that, is going to involve a little bit of programmatic behavior, for our purposes, that means a for loop or an if statement, right? Then it's going to go inside of curly braces with a % sign. That's the distinction between the two. Whether you agree with that distinction or not, I mean, I can't help you with that. That's just what the language is telling us that we need to do. Yeah, I could not, for example, do a for loop here. This would not work because by saying double curly braces there, I'm telling it that it's just a straight variable substitution. I can't do for statements inside of here. I can't do if statements inside of here. Great question. Any other questions? So the other issue that we have down here actually has to do with the error message, right? In particular, sometimes I have an error message and sometimes I don't. And so we now actually have the ability to either display this if we have an error message or not display this if we don't have an error message. What does that sound like to you? What programming construct does it sound like I'm using to describe that behavior? An if statement. An if statement. So I can use if statements in my code, in my templates rather, and it's going to look very similar. It's going to look very similar. So double curlies, right? No, I just said the opposite of that actually. Curly brace with % sign, and now I can say if what? I can put a variable here. If I put a variable name there, what I'm saying is, if this variable exists, right, do this thing. If this variable exists, then print out the error message. What do I need to put here? I can't do this anymore. This is Python. What do I do here? Double curlies, and then put the variable in here. And then I have to say, just like with the loops, I have to end my if statements as well. If this variable doesn't exist, then it's just going to skip this part. It's not going to include it on the page. It's just going to skip it. Okay? If we had not done this, so what would that's a good question. What would happen if we hadn't put the if statement here? It would always put the p tag in there, but it would just be blank. So would we actually see it? No, actually we wouldn't see it. In fact, that's what we did before. If you remember what we did in class, I guess that would have been Monday, actually. The p tag would have shown up every single time. It just would have been blank if there wasn't an error. This way is actually a little bit better. We're saying don't even put the p tag in the result if an error doesn't exist. So it's a little bit cleaner. I don't have that extra tag in my file if I don't actually need it. So doesn't necessarily change the functionality a whole lot, but it is a little bit cleaner, a little bit nicer this way. All right. I do, thank you. It would have yelled at me about that eventually. Or actually in my notes I'm showing that it doesn't. I don't need the colon. I'm showing that I don't. Well, I guess we'll have a little, I put the colon up here, now I'm wondering if I need that one. You're making me second guess myself. That's okay, I don't have to second guess myself. We're gonna try it and we're gonna see what happens. That's the best way to solve these kinds of questions. Let's just try it and see if it complains at me or not. We can't actually try it yet though. There's one final step that we need to do. There's one final thing that we need to do. And actually it's not in this file, it's back in main.py. So now that we've got a template, right? Now that we've created our template, all of this stuff that we were doing with HTML is no longer something that we need to do anymore. I don't need to do it anymore, right? So instead, what I'm going to do is get rid of anything that has to do with HTML. That line's gone. It deals with HTML. I don't care about it anymore. This line, gone. I don't care. Dealt with HTML. I don't need it anymore. All of this stuff, that's all HTML. Bye-bye. See you later. Right? This is all gone. That's all HTML. That's all out of here. I think I can even get rid of this else statement. What am I going to do instead? I'm going to render it. I'm going to render it. Right? I'm going to render it. So the first thing I need to do is come up here and import render template. Need to import the function. Yeah, question.
Do you need CGI imported when you import render template for the state?
Do I need CGI? So I have CGI imported.
Like you say that it was like automatically.
The escaping?
Yeah.
I think that's correct. I think it will escape it for you automatically. So I don't think it's technically required. It's not necessarily wrong either to do it that way. Yeah. Good question. So I imported render template up here, and now instead of returning the content, I'm going to return render template. What information do I need to pass into render template for it to do its job? The name of the template file, which we have called index.html. What else? This is the tricky part. Any variables that the template needs to function. So if I go back to my template real quick, we had a couple placeholders. It needs a watch list. It needs a list of movies, right? In order to function. it also needs this error message, which may or may not exist, right? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't, right? So we need to provide that information to the template. And so the way that we do that, I'm going to go back, and the name that I used here is watch_list, right? That is how I need to refer to it when I'm rendering this template as well. I need to use the exact name that I used inside of the template. So I'm going to say watch_list equals, and then I need to give it a list of movies here. How do I do that? We have a function for that. We made that function last time, right? It's called get current watch list right here. So I can plug that in like that. And then I'm going to pass in another value called error, because that's what I called it here, right? Error. Oops. And so I need to figure out which Python value I want to pass in there. So that's going to be what? Looks like it's going to be error escape. Yeah, you certainly could. You certainly could use auto escape if you want to. This is also another way to do it. That's very common in computer science. There's going to be 100 different ways to get us to the same. Yep. Yep. Sure will. Sure will. Yep. I mean, we could try it without if you want to. We could take this code out if you want to. Like, I'm fine with that. We could take that out. It is automatically set to true. That is correct, I believe. You can verify that in the documentation if you didn't trust it. But yeah, you're right. Now, this is where things get a little confusing, though. I don't like having a statement like this, error equals error. Is it correct? Technically, yes. Technically, yes. The error on the left side of the equal sign is referring to what? The template. The error on the right side of the equal sign is referring to a Python variable, but it just looks really confusing, doesn't it? It looks confusing to me. I prefer when those have different names. And so, you know, it might be a little arbitrary, but I might switch the name of this Python variable to be something different, just so that I know that I'm talking about two separate values here. So I might call this error arg, right? It's an argument from the request. So I might just tweak that a little bit just to make sure that there's a subtle difference between the two. And it's much clearer to me now that this is referring to the Python variable and this is referring to the template. I already knew that, right? But it just looks a little bit different now. That's helpful to me. And this is the scary part. This is where we get to try it and see if it works. We've done a lot, actually. If we haven't screwed anything up, which I think there's actually probably a pretty good chance that we did, but that's okay. I mean, it's good to see errors and how to handle them. If we got it right, though, what do we expect to happen? We expect our website to work exactly the same as it did when we started. Mm-hmm. Oh, sure you can. Sure you can. I mean, that's kind of what we're doing. It's just the stopping point is a little bit different because I'm still going to do this for a few more pages now, right? So I'm still going to stop and check for each one of those. Yeah. I actually kind of started with the, excuse me, with the largest page. Maybe I should have started with one that was a little bit shorter. That's my fault, but yeah, I should have picked a shorter one to begin with, but that's all right. We still got there. Let's try it out. I have not activated my environment yet. I'm going to switch this back to white. I don't know why I'm being flip-floppy about it today. Sorry. No, that's worse, right? Yeah. Sorry. I'm trying. Thanks. For people watching this on YouTube, he said I'm doing a great job. Hit the like button, subscribe. Why is that funny? Where was I? Oh yeah, I need to activate my environments. I haven't done that yet. So source activate, hello Flask. And now we get to run, Python main.py, and this is where we kind of cross our fingers and hope we didn't screw up too badly. It's running. Is it working? Well, let's find out. Localhost. None of those are correct. None of those are the address that I want. Yeah, I was doing some cheese work. You know how it is. All right, hey, whoa, it rendered. It rendered. That's amazing. I actually was expecting to have to fix some stuff, and it's working. So, awesome. I can actually see the movies here, right? And if I really want to verify that it's working properly, I could do something like go in and add a movie to the list, right? And see that it shows up. In fact, let's do that. Just because we can, I'm going to go back to my movie list here and add another movie. I bet you can't even guess which one it's going to be. And I'm going to go back and refresh. And, oh, wow, there it is. Yeah. It's working. It's working. I can certainly put my code up. The Python code, you mean? Or the template? If you don't delete stuff properly, if you deleted too much stuff, yeah, that would mess it up. You'll notice though that this function is actually dramatically reduced in size, right? There was a lot more stuff here a minute ago, and now I've got 2 lines. One to fetch the error from the query parameters, and one to render the template, and that's it. That actually feels pretty good. I like that a lot. So if you're running into errors, you should check. Make sure that the name that you're using here is the same as the one you use in the template, for example. Or if you have a template syntax error, like maybe you forgot to put the % on there, it'll tell you. It'll definitely tell you that something's off. So here, I refresh the page, and now I see this error message. It says, template syntax error, right? Unexpected bracket. But not only that, it should give me a little bit of a clue about where that happened. It might take a little bit of examination to figure out how to decipher this error message here. Well, actually, it's not really giving me a lot of clues as to where it happened, is it? It just says unexpected curly bracket, and it's not giving me a big clue as to where. Oh, well, I mean, I know exactly where it is, because I just botched the syntax myself. So this is maybe the most useful line, right? It's telling us that the index rendering failed because of a syntax error. Now, what that doesn't tell me is where in my template the syntax error occurred. That's the information that it's not giving to me, unfortunately. And so you would have to, if you see an error message like this, what does that tell you to do? That tells you to go back to the template in question and check all of these brackets to make sure that they've got all the proper pieces, right? Make sure they're all proper. Yeah, there's no colon down here, and it didn't seem to mind. There is a colon here, but if I take it off, will it complain? Let's see. Let's see if it complains or not. Nope, it doesn't care. Colons are optional, apparently. I learned something new today. Colons are optional. I'm not sure that that helps us too much. But yeah. So I want to do one more page. I want to do the same thing, but with one more page. But before I do, let me just pause here for a moment and see if there's any questions before I move on. So we're going to do another page. This second page should actually go a bit quicker than the first one because it's there's a lot less stuff going on. But actually, before we do that, let's do some more cleaning up. There's some more cleanup work we can do here. Specifically, I can come up here, right? See this cross-off form? Bye-bye. That's all gone. That's all in our template now, right? Does this make you nervous? Good. It makes me feel great. This is gone, right? That's all in our template now, right? Bye-bye. Here's the form for adding movies, right? That's all in our template now, so see you later. Bye-bye. Now I still have the header and the footer here, and I'm a little wary to delete those because I just said we're going to do another page, and that other page is also going to need the header and the footer. Now, but wait a second. Wait a second. Didn't we talk about something that we could use that would help us reuse this instead of having to put it into every single template file? We can use those extensions, right? We can use those extensions. So maybe we should take a little detour for a second and do that. Use the extensions. I hope that was a sigh of contentment. I'll be happy to come take a peek at it after we're done, figure out what went wrong. So I'm going to make a base. I'm going to make a base template that has the header and the footer in it. So let's do that. I'm going to click on my templates folder, and I'm going to make a new file. Again, if you want to do that via the command line, you certainly can. I'm just going to do it through here. So I want this to have the header and the footer, correct? So I can go back to Python and grab the header and paste it in. And then I'm going to leave a little bit of space and go back here and grab the footer and paste it in. What should I do in between to make it so that I can reuse this across templates? Actually, that is what I would expect to be used for most of the pages. I mean, that's what we're going to use. Could you change it? Yes, you could. But I think I'm fine with it for now. So what should I put in between these two if I intend to use this as an extension? What do I need? I need content is the name, is not the exact word I'm looking for. It's the other one. Block. It's a block. Content is just the name of the block. I could call that block whatever I want, right? The exercise has just called it content. But I do want to put a block in here. So is that squiggly brace? I don't know why I said that. I know what the actual name of those things are. Block. I mean, you can call it content if you want, right? But you can also call it whatever. I mean, it's just like a variable name, right? And then, do I need to do anything else? End block. Okay. And that's good. We're now ready to use this. We're now ready to use this. In fact, let's go back to the index that we just did and see if instead of see if we can use this this base template instead of having this code up here. So I want to actually remove the header, right, and the footer. I'm going to take those out. How do I use the base template that I have instead? Extends. So we'll put another block in here that says extends And then what? Base.html, the name of the file that has the base stuff in it, right? All right, what else do I, excuse me, what else do I need to do? What else do I need to do? I need to tell it that I want to use the block. I need to tell it what should go inside of that block. And so what should go inside of that block? Well, everything should go inside of the block. And so ahead of this, I will mark this as, what do I say? Block content again? Is that the right syntax? And then down at the very bottom, once I'm done, I'll say end block. So what I'm telling it to do, right, is say, use this base template. Everything in between here and the end block statement should be substituted in that base template for the content block. That's what I'm saying when I do this. Does that make sense? I'm taking this template and I'm embedding it inside of that base template. And so we can test this. Let's test it out. I saved it. Did I save my base? It looks like I saved my base. Let's go back to my page and hit refresh, and uh-oh. Base is undefined. Whoops. Base is undefined. I have to put it in quotes. Little syntax piece that I missed. Put it in quotes. All right, let's try again. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Nice. Not a difficult fix. Not a difficult fix. And so now I have a base template that I can use to insert the header and the footer every time if I want to, which allows us to do a little bit more cleanup in our Python file, right? Now I can take the header and the footer out of my Python file. Goodbye. See you later. Oh man, this is so therapeutic. Yeah. I'm sorry? At the very bottom of the page. Let me pull it back up. It's way down here at the bottom. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, sorry if I went a little too fast through that part. Now, something that I don't know if they mentioned in the prep work or not, I don't think they spent a lot of time on it. I can have multiple blocks here, right? I can have multiple blocks, multiple named blocks inside of this base template. And so that means then that I could have multiple blocks in this file as well. And so I'd have to start and end those blocks, right? I'd have to do it twice in this file then, one for each one that I have in my base template. But here we just have one block, so it's pretty easy to hook it up. And so we're going to do this one more time. I promise we're almost done. We just got a little bit left to go, I promise. Just have a little bit left to do. The last thing that I want to do is the cross-off page. So if I go back here and say I want to cross off Star Wars and I click cross it off, I just want to do this page real quick. Should be a quick one. Just want to do the same template thing with this page. Okay? So let's make our template first. I'm just pulling up my notes real quick to make sure I don't forget anything. All right, cool. Here we go. So I'm going to make one more template file, the last one for this walkthrough. I'm going to call it crossoff.html. And I want to use the base template again, right? That has the header and the footer in it. I want to reuse that. That's the whole point. That's why we did it. So I could use it multiple times. And honestly, I could just go and copy this for starters. Copy that. And then put an end block statement down here. And now I just have to decide what goes in between, what this page looks like. And so we can refer back to our Python again. I can go to the Python file and see what HTML I have in there for this page and copy it over. So let's go ahead and do that very quickly here. Here's my cross off. Yep, crossed off. And so this all has to do with the error messages. I'm going to leave that alone. Python can handle the error messages. That's a good thing for Python to do. What I don't want Python to mess with, I see some HTML, right? So what's it going to look like? It's going to have, well, the page header doesn't even exist anymore. It's going to say p tag confirmation, which is the crossed off movie element has been crossed off your watch list, followed by a p tag and a strike tag. Might be faster for me to just type it out than try to copy paste all the different pieces. So I had a p tag, then I had, thank you, Visual Studio Code, a strike tag. This is where I want to put what? Right here? The name of the movie that's being crossed off. So that's going to be a placeholder, right? That's going to be a placeholder. So I'll say bracket, bracket, crossed off movie, right? And then has been removed from your watch list, period. I think that's it as far as this template goes. This one was a bit shorter. Maybe I should have done this one first. We're doing it now. So then what am I going to have to do in the Python code now that I have this template? We're going to have to render. So I can get rid of the HTML. Anywhere that I see HTML code, that's all gone now, right? This is gone. Bye-bye. And instead, we're going to say render template. I know we've already done this before, but help me out here. First thing that's going to go in here, crossoff.html. And then what else do I need to pass in? The variable. So I did have that one placeholder. I called it crossed off movie. And the Python variable, oh, that's also called crossed off movie. That's a little unfortunate. I don't like it that they're both the same. That kind of bothers me. So maybe I'll just switch this a little bit. Call it crossed off. Crossed off equals crossed off movie. Take the Python variable, pass it into the template, fill it in this placeholder. That's what we're saying, right? That's what we're saying. And the last thing that we need to do is test it. Give it a spin, see what happens. So I'll go back to my page here and refresh and pick a movie and hit cross off, and it still works. Oh, I left a little space in there, whatever. I mean, it's a little formatting issue, but the page still works the way I expect. That is today's walkthrough, and actually to wrap up, let me just show you again how this file, this main.py file, has been cleaned up very significantly, right? This file has shrunk dramatically because we took all the HTML out and moved it off into the template files, and that's a beautiful thing. Like, this brings a tear to my eye. How lovely this file looks now to have all the HTML out there. You guys don't even know how painful it is for me to actually type the HTML into this file in the first place. I'm being dramatic, but it does make me happy to see the HTML moved out of here. That is a good thing. I think that's a very, very good thing. There's still a little bit left to go. You'll notice that we still have some HTML here in the add. That's part of your studio today, I believe. That's something you're going to tackle in today's studio, as well as a couple of other little things relating to this. But before I shut up and get out of the way, does anybody have any final questions or comments? Thank you. Yeah, I technically didn't write it, but Launch Code staff did. But yes, I agree. It does feel very good. I know this is a difficult concept, you guys. I know some of you have been having some trouble with it. The good news is that we're going to get a lot of practice doing it over the next few weeks. This is not the last time that we're going to be talking about templates and working with templates. So we're going to get a lot more practice with this. We'll keep reviewing these concepts until you get it. Alrighty, well, I'm going to turn you loose. Web Caesar's due today, so you can turn that in if you got it done or get some help on it if you need to. There's a studio for you to work on related to flick lists that I'm going to start talking about at 8 o'clock like I usually do. Let us know how we can help you out, and I'll see you at 8 o'clock. Yeah, what's up?